दोस्तों, कैसे हैं आप सभी लोग। आज की वीडियो में हम C शार्प के ट्यूटोरियल्स करने वाले हैं और मुझे C शार्प नहीं आते तो फिर उसके ट्यूटोरियल्स करेंगे हम अभी। तो फिर मुझे ये
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you want to write
अभी मुझे वो करना है,
essays that inspire.
Hey, welcome to Draft Academy. My name is Mike. In this course, I'm going to teach you guys everything you need to know to get started using C Sharp. Now, C Sharp is an extremely powerful programming language.
मैं इसको बंद कर दूँ, लाइक मेरे उस पर कॉपीराइट स्ट्राइक तो नहीं आएगा? बंद कर दूँ क्या डिवाइस का जो ऑडियो है? नहीं, खुला रहने देता, कुछ नहीं होता।
And it's used in millions of applications around the world. There are literally thousands of things you can do with C Sharp, and there's tons of different applications for this language. It's extremely powerful, and I'm excited to be bringing you guys a course that will teach you everything you need to know to get started. So we're going to start the course with the basics. We're going to install C Sharp. We're going to install a text editor called Visual Studio. We're going to get everything set up, and we'll start writing our first program. I'm going to teach you guys the basics of programming, so we're going to look at some of the core programming concepts. Things like working with data, variables, data types, getting input from users. Then we're going to move on to some more advanced stuff. We'll talk about things like loops and if statements and different data structures. And finally, we'll talk about some object-oriented programming concepts, things like classes and objects, inheritance, all that fun stuff. If you're new to programming or you just want to try and pick up C Sharp, then this course has something for you. I'm really excited to be bringing you guys C Sharp tutorials. It's an awesome language and there are literally thousands of things you can do with it. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's go into the course and start learning some C Sharp. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to install and get everything set up to start programming in C Sharp. Now, in order to start programming in C Sharp, we're actually just going to need one thing, which is going to be a program called Visual Studio Community. And this is basically a program that will allow us to write our C Sharp programs. And this is what's called an integrated development environment. And a lot of times you'll hear people call those IDEs. It's essentially just a special program where we can...
मेरे पास VS Code है, Visual Studio है मेरे पास,
write and work with our code. So in this case, this is an IDE that will allow us to work with the C Sharp programming language. So I'm over here on this website. It's just visualstudio.com/vs/community. And this is the website where we can go to download this. You'll see over here there's an option to download on Windows, and then there's also an option to download on Mac over here. So you can just click whichever one you need. In my case, I'm on a Windows, so I'm just going to go ahead and click the one for Windows. So I'll click this, and that's to start downloading in. We should get an installer that we can use to install Visual Studio. So once that's downloaded, I'm just going to click it, and we'll go ahead and run this installer. So when the installer loads up, you'll see we have this little window over here, and basically this is a little program that we can use to install what we need. Now here's the thing, this Visual Studio program is huge, and there's tons of stuff that you can actually do with it. So you can see there's all these different things we can install. I mean, there's probably like over 100 gigabytes worth of stuff that we can install here. We basically just need this guy over here that says .NET Desktop Development. This is all we're going to need.
VS Code .NET Development. मेरी स्ट्रीम तो चल रही है ना? हाँ, स्ट्रीम चल रही है। ओके, कोई भी नहीं देख रहा ना? यस। विजुअल स्टूडियो खुल गया, यस। अब मुझे इधर जाना है। क्या डालना था? .NET डेवलपमेंट, .NET इंस्टॉल, .NET कौन सा है? desktop ये मिल ही नहीं रहा। .NET डेस्कटॉप डेवलपमेंट कहाँ पर मिलेगा ये? और इसके आगे भी
We're going to be building something called a console application, which is essentially like the simplest type of application that we can build. And you see over here, it says the install size is around 3 gigabytes. So that's actually not too
डाउनलोड VS Code क्या था? वर्कलोड्स सॉरी मेरी स्पीड बहुत कम है, टाइपिंग स्पीड। आफ्टर इंस्टॉलेशन टूल्स में जाके ऑप्शंस में जाके टूल्स क्या है? नहीं वो नहीं जानना मुझे, वो तो सही है। ओ हाँ यही चाहिए। क्या कहाँ पे गया ये? विजुअल स्टूडियो इंस्टॉलर है ये। मॉडिफाई पे जाना है, विजुअल स्टूडियो इंस्टॉलर। तो फिर ये वो टर्मिनल न्यू टर्मिनल वो रन व्यू सिलेक्शन एडिट फाइल टर्मिनल वो कहाँ पे मिलेगा ये?
too bad. Some of these things are like a couple, maybe like dozen gigabytes or something like that. So yeah, click this .NET desktop development, and I'm just going to click install, and we're going to go ahead and install that. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. Alright, so once that is finished installing and downloading, we can just go ahead and click launch, and we can launch right into Visual Studio. And you'll see over here it's asking me to sign in. You don't actually have to sign in, so I'm just going to click not now, maybe later. And then over here we have a bunch of options. You'll see down here there's this drop down.
विजुअल स्टूडियो इंस्टॉलर ये चाहिए था मुझे। यस स्ट्रीम पर पूरा वो चल रही है मेरी स्ट्रीम, 8 मिनट की हो गई है। ओके ये इंस्टॉलर ये getting things ready up ये ऑलरेडी और अवेलेबल है। नहीं ना, मुझे मॉडिफाई पे क्लिक करूँ क्या? नहीं मॉडिफाई नहीं करें। फॉर स्टूडेंट्स हाँ ये रही है, मॉडिफाई पे ही करना था। क्या सर .NET इसकी की जरूरत नहीं है। ये डेस्कटॉप चल है क्या? ये 2 अभी पहले 3 GB था और अभी ये हो गया 7 GB। मॉडिफाई कर देता हूँ। टोटल स्पेस रिक्वायर्ड 2.94। मॉडिफाई स्टार्ट हो रहा है डाउनलोड। तो फिर चलो जब तक ये होता है मैं क्या करूँ तब तक
I'm just going to click general, so just make sure it's on general, and then we can, you don't actually have to visual. Studio. And you'll see over here, it's asking me to sign in. You don't actually have to sign in, so I'm just going to click not now, maybe later. And it's asking me to sign in. You don't actually have to sign in, so I'm just going to click not.
तो फिर ये तो हो गया 100%। अब बस फाइल्स बची है। फाइल्स में मैं एक चीज़ से करता हूँ, सेटिंग्स में जाके, हॉट कीज में जाके, स्टॉप स्प्रिंग नहीं, अनक्वालिटी और ट्रांजैक्शन को फेड सीन्स नहीं, डेस्कटॉप, हाँ म्यूट और अनम्यूट का। तो फिर म्यूट के लिए मैं यूज़ करूँगा 0 और अनम्यूट के लिए मैं यूज़ करूँगा 1। ठीक है, अप्लाई कर देता हूँ इसको। म्यूट के लिए 0, अनम्यूट के लिए 1। यस, ओके। तो फिर मैं अभी 0 दबाऊँगा। अरे यार, ये तो डेस्कटॉप का हो गया, डेस्कटॉप का नहीं करना मुझे। डेस्कटॉप और नहीं, इसको डिलीट कर दो, डिलीट कर दो, डिलीट करो, डिलीट, हाँ, पुश टू म्यूट, हाँ। तो फिर म्यूट के लिए मैं 0, टॉक के लिए मैं 1। ठीक है, अप्लाई करते हैं इसको। अब ओके करते हैं। अगर मैं अभी 0 दबाऊंगा तो फिर कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा। चलो कोई बात नहीं, अभी मैं वो करता हूँ। डाउनलोड हो जा, जल्दी डाउनलोड हो जा। आज की स्ट्रीम हमारी डाउनलोडिंग के लिए है। लाइव हूँ मैं 15 मिनट से। लगता है 01 से कुछ नहीं होगा। तो फिर चलो थोड़ा सा पीछे कर देते हैं।
Now, maybe later. It's asking to go ahead and doesn't take .NET desktop development, and I'm just going to click install, and we're going to go ahead and install that. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. All right, so once that is finished installing and downloading, we can just go ahead and click launch. And
ठीक है, जब डाउनलोड हो जाएगा तब लॉन्च दबा देना है, लेकिन डाउनलोड हो जाए। ये डाउनलोड कब होगा ये? डाउनलोड तो हो गया, ये इंस्टॉल हो रहे हैं, पैकेजेस इंस्टॉल हो रहे हैं उसके अंदर, विजुअल स्टूडियो के अंदर। इसको ये करता हूँ। तो फिर फाइनली ये हो चुका है 180 के 180 मॉड्यूल्स हो चुके हैं, लेकिन फिर भी ओ दिस माइट टेक अ फिनिशिंग अप। फिनिश कर दो उसको जल्दी 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 से जल्दी जल्दी जल्दी। 99% हो चुका है अब। ओ later check out the Microsoft Developer available here, which is Studio Code. कितनी देर लगेगी? कब तक होगा ये टेकिंग वाइल फिनिश अप? मुझे सब्र नहीं है। OBS 21 minutes live stream, डिस्प्ले कैप्चर, गेम कैप्चर। ओके, मुझे एक चीज करनी है। एनालिटिक्स देखे तो एवरेज वॉच टाइम वो, chat rate 0, stream settings closed caption analytics good चल रही है कि चलो ना जल्दी हो जाइए। चलो तब तक मैं दिखाता हूँ कि मेरे पास क्या क्या है। ये PC, विजुअल स्टूडियो कोड, रिसाइकल बिन, यूनिटी हब, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट एज, ये 1 बाइट लैब्स का वो है, टेक्सटेक, गूगल क्रोम, टेलीग्राम, एम सेंटर, वंडरसेफ, फिल्मोरा, OBS, यूनिटी, डिस्कॉर्ड, ब्लेंडर। ये मेरा चैनल है, एक और गेमिंग चैनल है। और ये कार ट्रेसिंग गेम मैंने बनाया था यूनिटी के अंदर। HTML जावास्क्रिप्ट की मैंने जो पढ़ाई की थी उसका एक वो इधर है। ये माइक्रोसॉफ्ट एज और ये मेरे वाईफाई का पासवर्ड। वो कोई एक है नहीं। finishing up इतनी देर।
And we can launch right into Visual Studio. And you'll see over here, it's asking me to.
Wait a second. ओ हो गया क्या कुछ? ओ यस, ये रेड से ब्लू क्यों हो रहा? हो गया। लॉन्च कर देता हूँ जैसे इसने किया था। विजुअल स्टूडियो खुल गया। यस यस, लॉन्च पे क्लिक किया था ना, खुल रहा है लॉन्च। ये विजुअल स्टूडियो 2019, लेकिन मेरे पास लेटेस्ट वर्जन है, फिर भी मैं पुराना वाला यूज़ करूँ। विजुअल स्टूडियो कितने खुल गए? 3 बार लॉन्च किया था तो फिर 3 खुल गए। मुझे एग्जिट करना है, 2 नहीं चाहिए, बस 1 चाहिए। तो फिर अभी मैं नॉट नाउ मे बी लेटर। मुझे अकाउंट बनाने की जरूरत नहीं, उसने भी नहीं बताया था। अब नॉट नाउ मे बी लेटर कर दिया। अब आगे लोड हो रहा है। कितनी लोडिंग होती है? वी आर गेटिंग थीम्स रेडी। ओके, मुझे डार्क थीम पसंद है। स्टार्ट दिस विल टेक्स। वी आर प्रिपेयरिंग योर फर्स्ट यूज। ओके, तो फिर चलिए अब वो करते हैं। वी आर प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर फर्स्ट यूज, दिस विल टेक अ व्हाइल। मैंने कितना वो कर लिया। We are preparing for the first use. हुआ क्या? लोड हो रहा है ये फिर। अब हाँ क्या करना है मुझे?
Sign in. You don't actually have to sign in, so I'm just going to click not now, maybe later. And then over here we have a bunch of options. You'll see down here there's this drop down. I'm just going to click general, so just make sure it's on general, and then we can pick whatever style we want to have. We can just go with the basics, so I'll just stick with blue, and then I'm going to click Start Visual Studio. Alright, so this should go ahead and open up this little starting page. I'm just going to click out of this. We don't need to have this up here. And I'm going to go over here.
इसको क्रॉस कर देना है क्या? इसको ओके, इसके में एक्चुअली सब कोई जरूरत नहीं है। हाँ यहाँ पे आ गए हम अब
Here, and we're just going to click File, and I'm going to click New Project. So we want to start a new project, and this is basically going to allow.
ओके ठीक है, तो फिर मुझे फाइल में जाना है, फाइल, और मैं बता देता हूँ मैं C+ में नया हूँ, मुझे नहीं आता है, ठीक है C+, और फिर न्यू फाइल ही थी ना शायद से। हाँ तो फिर ये क्या है?
Us to write. We want to start a new project, and we're just going to click File, and I'm going to click New Project. So
प्रोजेक्ट क्रॉस करो, कैंसिल, फाइल में जाके न्यू प्रोजेक्ट, और ये हाँ तो फिर अब क्या करना है?
we want to start a new project, and this is basically going to allow us to write our applications. So over here inside of Visual C#, you can just click here, and you'll see over here there's an option for console app. This is what we want. So don't get too intimidated by all this different stuff. Like I said before, Visual Studio is a very powerful program, and it can do a lot of stuff. But make sure you just click console app, and we should be good. So I'm just going to click OK. And actually down here we could give this a name. So
console क्या चीज़? console app. ओके ठीक है, तो console app.net code app.net framework. Net standard net code net framework. Windows app है ना, Windows console app console app.net framework, यही है ना जो एक बार मैं देख लेता हूँ .net framework। हाँ ये console app.net framework। नेक्स्ट ओके, तो फिर इसको मैं नेम क्या दूँ? फर्स्ट प्रोजेक्ट, फर्स्ट प्रोजेक्ट सोल्यूशन। ओके अब
make sure you just click console app, and we should be good. So I'm just going to click OK. And actually down here we could give this a name. So I'm just going to call this draft, and then we could store it wherever we wanted to store it. So when this loads.
ओके तो फिर हमें मुझे क्रिएट कर देना है। क्रिएट हो जाएगा, नॉट रिस्पॉन्डिंग। क्यों? मैं स्ट्रीमिंग कर रहा हूँ इसलिए। विजुअल स्टूडियो के साथ भी ये भी और रखो। static void main string args not responding क्यों आ रहा है ये? good लोग देख रहे थे लिटरली मेरी वीडियो को। वाओ, किसी ने मेरा वो देखी, किसी ने मेरी लाइव स्ट्रीम देखी, मुझे यकीन नहीं हो रहा। किसी एक्चुअल बंदे ने मेरी लाइव स्ट्रीम देखी। वो लेकिन अभी क्या करूँ? अभी तो हो गया, सही हो गया। तो फिर अभी
Loads up, you'll see that we now have this file open, and this is just called program.cs, and that .cs extension stands for C#. And then down here we have a basic CS extension, stands for C#. And then down here we have a basic program. So this is essentially a very simple program, and it's sort of like the template for a program. And don't worry too much about what all this stuff is. In the next video, I'm going to talk you guys through what all this stuff is, what it means, and we'll actually write our first program. But for now, we have everything set up, so we're ready to go and ready to get started with C# development.
ये तो हो गया, लेकिन पूरा उसका है, इसने बहुत सारा वो किया और फिर उसको एक साथ रख दिया. हाँ तो फिर चलो ड्राइंग से अगला चैप्टर.
In this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to write your first C# program. We're also just going to talk in general about what a program is. So we're going to look at the different instructions that we can give to the computer and how those instructions are going to play out and allow us to write applications. So over here, we basically just have our basic project set up, and I kind of went over how to do this in the last tutorial. And we're basically given this little text file, and this is a C# file, so it's called program.cs, and that CS extension stands for C#. You'll also notice over here in our Solution Explorer, we have a bunch of different stuff here. So I called my project Draft, and then over here I have like this little properties thing, this references thing. Really all we need to worry about over here, and I know there's a lot of stuff over here, is this guy right here, program.cs. That is the C# file that we're going to be programming in. That's the file we're going to be using for this course. And this is really all you need to worry about over here. And you'll see that this is actually populated with some code, with some text by default. You'll see up here we have all of these little commands. It just says using system.collections, all this stuff. Essentially what this is doing is it's just configuring the file, so you don't really have to worry too much about what this stuff is up here. Just make sure that you leave it alone, don't touch it. But basically there's some things that we're going to have to use with C#, and up here we can specify that we want to use them. So there's these things called system, and there's all these different things that we can use inside of there. But for the most part, you can just kind of leave this alone for now. We'll talk more about what this is later in the course, but for now you don't have to worry about it too much. Down here you'll see this says namespace draft. You'll notice that this is actually the same name as the project that we're using, and essentially that's what this is saying. It's saying that we're in the draft project, and actually this is doing some more stuff. Again, we're going to talk more about namespaces later in the course, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. And really, all the stuff up here you can kind of just leave alone. You don't have to worry about that in the beginning. And down here we have these two curly brackets, and these two curly brackets essentially just signify that our program is starting. So inside of these curly brackets we can actually write some code, and the computer will be able to execute that code. Here we have this keyword class, and it's called program. Now a class is essentially just a container where we can store a bunch of code. So inside of a class we can write all of the code for our program, and it'll be able to be executed. So again, we're going to talk more about classes as we go on through this course, but for now just know that a class is essentially just a container where we can put code. Down here we have this line of code here. It says static void main, and this is actually what's called a method or a function. Again, we're going to talk more about methods and functions later in the course, but this is sort of just like another container where we can put code. And this is a very important container because this container is where we can put all the code that we want our program to execute. So this main method or this main function, any code that we put inside of here, in other words, any code that we put inside of these open and closed curly brackets, is actually going to get executed by our computer. So whatever code I want my program to have, I need to put it inside of this main method. So inside of these open and closed curly brackets. Now, I understand that a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense right now, and to be perfectly honest with you, we kind of have to just set our program up this way in order for it to work. It doesn't matter if this stuff doesn't make sense. Like, obviously you're not going to understand what all this stuff is, but just know that that's totally fine. Like, as a beginner, you're not expected to know any of that. You're not going to know any of that. Through this course, though, I'm going to be teaching you guys all of this stuff. So by the end of the course, we'll understand what all this stuff is doing, why it's important, why it's there. But for now, I just need you to trust me that we need to have everything set up like this in order for our programs to run. And any code that we're going to write inside of our C# file that we want to execute, I want to put in between these two curly brackets inside of this main block. Okay. So now that we've kind of talked about the structure a little bit, we've talked about, some of the stuff that we needed to know, what I want to do is actually write our first line of code. So we're going to go ahead and write a line of code which is going to print something out onto the screen. So one of the things that is really useful to do when we're writing a program is to print out information. And the most basic instruction that we can give the computer is basically telling it to print something out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Down here, we're going to write our first line of code. So I'm just going to say console with a capital C dot write line. And then I'm going to make an open and closed parentheses, and I'm going to make a semicolon. Now, inside of these open and closed parentheses, I'm going to make an open and closed quotation mark, and I'm just going to type out hello world. So essentially what we're doing here is we're telling C# that we want to write this text out onto the screen. So let's kind of look through this line of code. I'm saying console.writeLine, and this is an instruction. So essentially I'm telling C# that I want to write a line out onto the console. And as you'll see in a second, the console is basically just a little window where we can see the output of our program. I'm saying console.writeLine, and inside of these parentheses, I'm specifying what I want to write out onto the console or out onto the screen. And I'm basically just saying hello world, and then over here I'm putting this semicolon. Now, whenever we're writing a line of code in C#, whenever you're done writing that line of code, you always need to end it with a semicolon. So for the most part, whenever you write an instruction, whenever you write a line of code, you're going to end it with a semicolon, and that's very important. And as a beginner, you're going to forget to put the semicolon. Trust me, everybody does, but eventually you'll just kind of get used to putting it in there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and now we're going to actually execute this program. So when I say execute the program, essentially what I'm doing is I'm telling the computer to go through and carry out all of the instructions that we specify. In our program right now, we only really have one instruction, which is telling the computer to write a line out onto the console. I'm going to come up here and you'll see there's this start button. So this is going to be our best friend throughout the course. Anytime I want to run my program, I'm going to go ahead and click this start button. So I'm just going to click it. And when I click this start button, my program is actually going to run. And if you look there, you'll see that a black window popped up for just a second. I'm continuing to run it. Essentially what's happening is C# is printing out